If you could protect your auto accident victims from permanent harm from a spinal cord injury in under 1 minute, would you? The Speedboard is a simple, easy-to-use cervical thoracic splint. It is intended for rapid orthopedic stabilization of an automobile accident victim for whom either symptoms or mechanism suggest a possibility of a spinal cord injury. As with any orthopedic immobilization technique, 2 sets of hands are required. First, the initial responder must assume responsibility for maintaining in-line stabilization manually. That rescuer should place both hands on either side of the patient's head at the jawline below the ears to lift and hold the neck in a stable inline position. This is frequently best accomplished by approaching the patient from the rear seat or from the opposite side if access is available. Next, one must take care to properly size and apply the cervical collar to provide a sound foundation for cervical immobilization. Place your body facing the same direction as the patient. Place your hand nearest the patient at the base of the patient's neck with your fingers together facing the same way the patient is looking. Imagine a straight line from your fingers to the bony prominence of the patient's chin and count how many fingers are at or below this imaginary line. 1 finger in neck height is usually a no-neck sized collar, 2 fingers is short, 3 fingers are regular, and 4 is a tall. Far too many no-neck sized collars are used today. Once the cervical collar has been applied, insert the bottom edge of the Speedboard behind the patient's lower back. Then, once the top of the Speedboard clears the roofline, rotate the Speedboard up to its final position. Take special care to ensure that before applying the straps, you have the Speedboard positioned so that the securing knots of the top 2 straps are even with the top of the patient's shoulders. Use your hand nearest the patient to touch both knot and shoulders with your fingers spread to determine the correct placement, even in the dark. Now your Speedboard straps can be applied. Note all the buckles are conveniently located at the patient's head. First, secure the shoulder straps and make sure they lay up tight in the armpit and travel straight across the short distance at the top of the torso to pin the base of the cervical collar. This integrates the collar into the unitized monolithic splint structure. One should note that this places them well above women's breasts and takes advantage of the minimal differences in this key dimension of most adults ranging from 120 to 240 pounds. The straps do not interfere with respiration, as do other vest-style short spine devices, and it allows continuously unobstructed observation. If the patient is slender, a useful technique is to reach behind the patient's arms and pull the strap to take out all the slack. Now apply the waist belt of the Speedboard, which can be adjusted from either or both sides of the patient during difficult access situations. Now apply the disposable head and chin tapes to complete the short application process. When moving the patient from the car to the longboard, be sure not to lift by the splint. This has been recommended by most EMS textbooks and the manufacturer's product instructions. Use what is intentionally the only handle on the Speedboard to help guide the patient's head to the longboard. Disposable pads are also useful to pad the space behind the patient's neck. During those rare occasions when a patient's head is much smaller than most, you may wish to add padding behind the head to assure neutral alignment. Or, if the patient's head is unusually large, the Speedboard's head cushion can be quickly detached, and padding used of a thinner depth behind the head instead. With only a little practice, you will be able to fully apply the Speedboard in about 1 minute. This completes the Speedboard quick tutorial, and you can obtain reprints of the standard printed instructions for use on the internet at ProLightSpineBoards.com or from your full-service EMS distributor representative.